Welcome, this is Karen Hudis, and I'm speaking to you about our new reality, which is where humanity finds itself. And one of the best things about our new reality is that we're going to remain alive. And that wasn't a foregone conclusion, because the black nobility, that's the people who descended from the pharaohs and thought they were entitled to eat off of everybody else's plate, to rob everybody, to take away their birthright, and to keep them poor while they themselves remained vastly rich. They thought that was going to continue. And as I've told you before, that's not continuing because enough of us know what they did. And there's nothing they can do about it. Knowledge is something that can't be returned to sender. We know this. And what's more and more of us know this. And the proof, of course, that we know this is because this group tried to kill us. They did. They tried to kill us. They tried to put us into World War III, and it didn't work. Enough of us knew that there was a coalition that formed that was going to prevent us from ending in World War III. This group, they're sore losers. They never understand that that they've lost. That reality is manifest with all of us, that part of humanity that uses our full brain, that is empathetic. And so one of the things, the attempts of this black nobility was they like to use something called divide and conquer. They like to turn one group of people against another. And you can see that in what happened with the pipeline for gas. One group, which includes Russia, was using a pipeline from Qatar, and another group was using a pipeline from Syria. That's the group that's got Saudi Arabia as a member. And so that was one of the ways that the black nobility was trying to divide and conquer us. And of course, you know about the this terrible blood feud between the Palestinians and the Jews. This was set up, the Zionists, this was set up to try to keep everybody at each other's throats. That's one of the most intractable problems. And we resolved this problem a while ago. When I say we, it was Barry Kamish, who was a Canadian journalist who went and lived in Israel. And he found out who had killed Yitzhak Rabin and why Yitzhak Rabin was part of this process. The history that we've been taught and the actual history are very different. And one of the things that this group of black nobility has done is they've used a story about the Holocaust at the end of World War II and who Hitler was. And it turns out that this is just simply a fabrication. The real thing that happened at the end of World War II is that a German submarine was captured transporting the device for triggering a nuclear bomb, and that is the bomb that went off in Hiroshima. And this business about the Holocaust and 6 million Jews being killed in death camps, the death camps were an invention. What happened at the end of World War II was when the Russians came back, they constructed the gas chambers. The gas chambers were not part of the concentration camps. There were actually concentration camps, but those camps were being used to manufacture enriched uranium to trigger the device. So that's just part of the history that we've been bamboozled into. And most people are going to believe that history that's being, that false history that's being taught in our schools and that's being written about in our history books. We're going to have to go back and revise the history. As you know, I'm saying as you know, as people who have been listening to this DC TV series on the network of global corporate control know, the story about Hiroshima and what happened with Hitler. This was made up because World War II was actually fought to kill off 25 million Russians. That's what World War II was about. And then the World Bank was created in order to resolve this problem. And the people that created the World Bank knew that the black nobility was still there and was still very much going to try to grab the world's wealth, although Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos had taken it and melted it down and put it in a trust. But Ferdinand Marcos, who was a very good lawyer, knew that there's something called the statute of limitations. And after 50 years, after Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos had taken the world's wealth, the black nobility couldn't take it back. They couldn't take it back because of the statute of limitations. If the trust that Ferdinand Marcos set up at the World Bank continued for more than 50 years, then the right of the black nobility to try to grab that wealth back would have been lost. And that's where I came in, because I was in the World Bank legal department and I learned about all of this. And then I learned that the black nobility hadn't succeeded. I think the 50 years had ended after 2005. It was in 1949 that Jose Rizal put these assets on deposit in the World Bank. And somebody once sent me the board of directors meeting in the Philippines that showed when Jose Rizal had given his proclamation and declaration of the gift of love. And that person sent me that email. He was somebody from the Philippines, I'm reasonably sure, because I had mentioned that, there were a number of people that were telling me things that weren't true. One of the people that was lying to me was Wolfgang Struck. And Wolfgang Struck told me that Jose Rizal was actually a foundling, and his parents were raising him, but they weren't his real parents. That Jose Rizal's real parents were from the English. Well, that was a lie. And once I mentioned on DCTV that was a lie, and that Jose Rizal had descended from the people in the Philippines, somebody sent me the minutes of the meeting where Jose Rizal had deposited the wealth of the world. So there are a number of lies that have been told to me to try to get me off track, to confuse me. One of the first lies was from a group in Taiwan that were saying that the world's wealth was what they had under control, and that I should simply help them. Well, it wasn't that I should simply help them. It's because I learned that they were lying, and the world's wealth belonged to the world's people and not to this Taiwanese company. So I can show you there was another liar, that was Ben Carlson. So on the series in DCTV, you'll see how I've managed to figure out with the help of a lot of other people, that there are a lot of liars. I call this controlled opposition. But the story, the jigsaw puzzle, is not finished. We're all responsible for figuring out what our past is, what our true past is. And as we go forward, we're going to have to transform our world in the way that that we agree is not corrupt, because all of the governments are part of this network of global corporate control, the cabal, as we call it. And that cabal is being directed by the black nobility. So how are we going to figure out what all the people, when we're not corrupt, and we're not being dominated by corrupt people who don't use their full brains, how are we going to transition? And this is where, excuse me for the interruption, where as members of humanity, we're all imperfect. And that's one of the most delightful things about us, that we all work together to overcome our foibles. So anyway, you just have to laugh. Our senses of humor, that's one of the things that distinguishes us from, you know, the ones that aren't using our full brains. Laughter is such a wonderful thing. But so where was I? Oh yes. So I was going to tell you, how are we going to use humanity to direct us when our governments are still all corrupt? And this is where we have the wonderful power transition model that we can use as, it's an approximation. It's a way of guessing what everybody would want in a coalition. The way the power transition model works is you bring in an expert who understands a problem very well and who knows who's a stakeholder influencing that problem and how important this issue is for those stakeholders. And once the expert has those indicators, you can then use the software to predict with a great deal of accuracy, 90 to 95%, how things will come out. So what we're going to do is we're going to find country experts to tell us what they think their country would like if all of the people were actually involved. And then if it turns out, once we've come up with that approximation, if it turns out in reality that that was wrong, we'll go back and fix it. So the idea is that we don't have to wait until all the corruption is ended in order to have a kinder world. We can use this power transition model, and then we can go back and correct it. It's very, very accurate. So there shouldn't be a large correction that's required. But the fact is, we will make all the corrections so that we're not in any risk of returning to a corrupt world. That was one of the preconditions. That was one of the reasons that we were waiting for this new reality. We had to find the means of going forward rapidly, because if you drag it out too long, people are not going to accept it. They're going to want revenge, and we don't want revenge. Now, did I just see a signal that it's time is up? No, I'm sorry. Good, I've got some more time. Well, so then one of the things that I do, one of my functions, is to make sure that we all do inherit the peaceful gift from Jose Rizal, the proclamation and declaration of the gift of love. So we're living in a universe where we're part of a new reality, and we're going to create heaven on earth. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to care for each other as much as we care for ourselves, if not more. And I can tell you through my experiences, because I've been punished. I've been punished for being part of this process, and I've been very severely punished, as some of you know. I'm sitting here with a broken leg. I was pulled down very forcefully. And my leg was broken. This was a way of trying to get me, I suppose it was a last-ditch effort of trying to get me to be quiet. But as you can see, no, I'm not quiet. I'm not silenced. I'm very much with everyone else. And as I think I mentioned in the very beginning of this session, I didn't really have a choice. If I love my children and I love humanity, which I do, I'm going to do my part, but it's not just my part. We all have to do our parts. We're all of us responsible for each other and for humanity and for loving each other and for our relatives and for I started out by writing something which I'm going to put up when I put the YouTube up. And I mentioned about how the people in Ghana, many of them, believe that their ancestors are sitting on their shoulders and watching what they do. And this is a very good tradition, because if you're part of immortal humanity, then you're going to care very much about what your relatives who have passed their genes on to you also think of your behavior. You're going to be a more moral person. But then again, we're all going to just have to try our hardest, because we are human, and we're a lot stronger as a group than we are as individuals. One of the other things that I've been mentioning to you is about the power of music. And let me go back and tell you again about a wonderful song that I learned from one of my caregivers. It's called Jerusalem, Ayah, which is a song that we're all going to be singing together. It's and we do this at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we do it at 8 at night. So was that a signal that my time is? No. Oh, okay. I'm still going on. Well, I don't want to take more than a half an hour, but I may actually do that when I've run out of things to say. Let me just finish up with telling you about Jerusalem. This is a kind of a gospel song, actually. And it says that we are all living in Jerusalem, but we're also guarding each other, because we have a risk. We have a risk that we would fall back into a corrupt world. We don't want to go back to that corrupt world. We don't belong in that corrupt world. We belong in the new reality, which is a reality where we all love each other and we all work together. And I think I will conclude with that. Thank you very much.